My intention is just to go and flow and see what comes out. I've been reminiscing on this topic for a few weeks now, but it really just like solidified last night when I was learning from a life experience, and it just clicked. You know when something just like clicks in your brain, and like you've heard it before, maybe in a different way, but like either you hear something or you hear a quote, or like in your head you're working through something and it just like clicks in that moment and you'll never forget that moment. This is what I'm talking about. So okay, so I want to start out, what we're going to be talking about basically is fear. And fear in this conversation is going to be like almost like an umbrella over all of these other emotions, because I believe that fear encompasses so many different things. So let's start with shame, guilt, doubt, insecurity, jealousy, dependency, anything like that is basically fear. So it all comes from the umbrella of fear. And when we're feeling any of those emotions, so like if you think of the Hawkins scale of vibration and how shame is at the very bottom, and then it goes guilt, I think it's apathy, and then fear. The reason why I'm saying that fear is basically encompassing all of that, because I feel like fear, technically, this is only my opinion and what I've learned through life experiences and going through so much fear in my life, to know that fear encompasses all of this. Even though shame and guilt are the lowest vibration technically, I want to kind of like describe a different view on those emotions. Because first of all, if you've ever felt shame or guilt, those two emotions in particular, that means that you are capable of feeling where you have messed up and you've looked at yourself in the mirror and you know the points or where you weren't fully in integrity in your life, or where you needed to make something right but didn't know how to, or confess something and it made things worse, right? That's what those emotions bring up within us. So if you've ever felt those, that's actually a good thing. I know that there's a lot of different opinions on these emotions, and I agree that like staying in those vibrations and, you know, woe is me, the pity mentality, the victim mentality, that can be very suffocating. It can be almost like this weight on your chest that doesn't seem to want to lift, because you're so hard on yourself, you're beating yourself up so much, and it almost spirals into where you start beating yourself up on things that have absolutely nothing to do with you, almost like everything is your fault. And so I guess I'm just gonna go into like a personal story that I've experienced and how I've moved through shame and guilt in my own life. So about 1.5 years ago, I went through the biggest spiritual awakening in my life, and it happened so rapidly. We can do a whole other video on that. I'm not going to get super far into it. If you want to see kind of like part of the story, you can check out my video on spiritual psychosis, spiritual awakening, and mental illness, and how you can experience all three at the same time. But basically, I wanted to start out by kind of explaining where I'm getting this theory from. So when I was going through this 1.5 years ago, it was really prominent during February 2024. I'll never forget that month. There's a lot of things that happened to me, and it changed the course of my life forever. I had a physical shop location that I owned with my mom, and there was a few other people that were involved, and we built a community. Our shop was an artist collective with about 50 local artists, and we really created a presence in the community. We really wanted to always go back to love, and that was our core value of our shop, and accepting artists for who they are and showing people that everyone is an artist. And so, long story short, basically I went through a lot of personal things at once with multiple different people in my life, and I ended up basically going crazy for part of it. And it was kind of a mix of both. Like, I would feel empowered, but then I would project my pain on other people, and I eventually humiliated myself, like completely humiliated myself on social media, and had to go through a lot of shame because of what I said that was out of line, even though there was some truth in it. The delivery could have been better. And so all of this emotion, all of this anger, all of this sadness, all of this fear within me was released at once, and it came out. And there was a point where I couldn't even handle it. My body, I was out of my body. I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating, and there was one point, like I said, I'll make another video about this. This is not what I wanted this video to be about, but there was one point where a group of my friends had taken me to the hospital so I could get the nutrition, the sleep, and the help that I needed. And I was in so much fear that I thought that this hospital was like taking me away, and I ran from the hospital, and I ended up in a box of de-icer. And I can't even describe to you the amount of fear that I felt while I was in that box. My whole entire body was burning with fear. And so the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I've felt all the different levels of fear in my life, and it always comes back to fear. So let's say, for like example, like I was describing at the beginning, shame, guilt, doubt, insecurity, jealousy, and then anxiety as well, and depression. Those are all emotions. Those are all feelings that we feel in different parts of our body. For example, when I experience anxiety, I feel anxiety in my stomach, sometimes in my chest, but I also feel it in my hands. If I'm having an anxiety attack, I'll feel it in my hands, in my face. They'll start to tingle. And so even though we can like distinguish between like the different emotions, it all comes back to fear, because all of those emotions that are technically lower vibrational are connected to fear, and fear is what rules those emotions and is controlling those emotions, because we have either a conscious or a subconscious fear within our being that needs to be expressed. And so it's going to come through the body, and you're going to feel it as anxiety or doubt or jealousy. And the fear that it's attached to each emotion is going to be different for everybody, right? And for each emotion too. So like, for example, jealousy. So jealousy, when something comes up that makes you feel jealous, it might stem from the fear of abandonment or the fear of not being good enough. And so basically understanding that it always comes back to fear. Fear is a controlling force within our vessels, and it's there to distract us. And so once we recognize these emotions as just fear, it almost loses its power. Okay, so for example, one of my biggest subconscious fears in my life is the fear of being judged, misunderstood, or not accepted. And so I spent a lot of my life trying to get people to like me and to try so hard to get people to understand me. And I'm going to kind of tie this back in, because what I went through a year and a half ago, I kind of fell into a hermit phase, and I was almost hiding from the world because I didn't want to be judged. I know that there could have been people in the community talking about me or judging me or hearing through the grapevine something that could have had truth to it, but also could have been twisted in a way that actually wasn't my truth because no one knew what I went through. And so putting myself back out there, which I have been recently, and seeing people that I haven't seen in a long time, and almost standing in my power and realizing that I've done all this healing work, so it's okay for me to be in places and spaces when I want to be, and that shouldn't have to determine my worth with what somebody else is saying, which I don't even know. At this point, I don't even care. But I have realized that what someone thinks or how someone reacts to you, literally you thinking, let's say like you think, oh, this person doesn't like me because of how they reacted towards me or how what they said about me, whatever it is. That's a selfish thought, because you truly don't know what that person is going through. You truly don't know how they actually feel about you. You're perceiving something based on your perspective. And so thinking that is selfish, because most of the time it actually has nothing to do with you and who you are. And so almost like recognizing that not everything is about you. And I know that's a hard truth. It is. And of course our worlds are about us, right? I see my perspective and I see the world how I want to see it, and so do you. But not everything is about you. And so going into conversations, going into situations with the purpose of connecting with another person, seeing that other person, even if they don't see you or they misunderstand you. If you stand in your power and you are there to connect with the other person and to get to understand their world and their perspective, because you can learn from anybody, you are truly present. You're not thinking about how your hair looks. You're not thinking about, oh my God, what did they hear about me? You are there, connecting. You're not there to talk about you. You're not there to prove to somebody else that you are worthy. You're there purposely for the purpose of connecting with another human being. And so recognizing that once we see the fear and anything under the umbrella of fear, once we see it and we feel it and we know it's there, because everybody has it. We all have fear within us. I mean, come on. We are living in this world. This world is trying to keep us trapped in fear. And so it is our job to see that within ourselves, because it's not just the fear that's going on around us. It's our internal fear. That's the only fear that we can work on, and the only fear that we can transmute into creation. And so looking at those parts of us and seeing them for what they are. And honestly, there's a common saying, actually I can't remember like the word of, okay, so fear, right? False evidence appearing real. I don't fully agree with that, because here's the thing. There is a lot of valid fears out there. There truly is a lot of valid fear in the world. And within ourselves, when we feel fear about something, it is valid because it feels so real, right? It's on the other side that we realize that it wasn't as real as maybe we thought it was. Or we don't have to stay in that vibration of fear on that particular thing because it's unknown, right? Fear of the unknown. That's what I'm talking about. Fear of the unknown. Fear of death. Fear of the world ending, you know, things like that. Like, we don't have to live in that fear, even though it's always a possibility. And we free ourselves once we see it and we feel it and we work through the shame and we pity ourselves for a minute and we almost teach ourselves the lesson of like, hey, like, don't repeat that mistake because that shame is going to hit you again. We don't want to feel shame, but sometimes we have to. Sometimes we have to go through these emotions so that we can learn how to not repeat our mistakes. That is the whole point. And so the reason why I was doing this about shame being like the lowest vibration is because we can learn so much from shame. That is our shadow, that is our darkness. All of those things under the umbrella that I was saying, that is our shadow. That is the deep parts of us that we don't want to look at, and when it hits you right in the face sometimes. And you're not prepared for it, right? So sometimes you're going to fall on your face, in the face of shame. But that's the point of it, and the whole point of it is to drag yourselves out of that hole, that pit that you dug, and to learn from your mistakes and not repeat them, and become the person you're always meant to be. Because sometimes shame is our fault, sometimes it's not. Sometimes we twist it into thinking it is our fault when it's not. And other times we need to look in the mirror and say, hey, where did I go wrong? What can I do to fix this? Because that is the point. We're not here to be perfect. We all make mistakes. I saw something the other day that was, what was it? I've made mistakes I can't change, but I've changed so I won't make the same mistakes. And I just thought that was beautiful, because if you truly learn from your mistakes, then you truly learn. But if you don't, you're going to keep repeating the same cycle, and that's the point of the shame cycle. And so, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. All I wanted to tie together. Once we change our perspective on something, everything changes. And trying to decide someone else's perspective without knowing it isn't fair, because you don't know. You actually don't know what they're thinking or what they're going through. So, being there, being present with the other person, and not assuming what they think of you or the conversation. Because that's not your job to do. And just understanding that shame is our biggest teacher. Shame and guilt are our biggest teachers in this life. And fear in general. And it's not to say not to have fear, because that's a natural part of the human existence, is to have fear. But I think that's the purpose, in my opinion, in my personal life experience, I think that's the purpose of fear, is to understand fear, understand fear, and overstand fear. And stand up to fear and say, you know what? You don't control me. My inner being does. My center guides me. The fear doesn't control me. My center guides me. And now I know what the feeling is when the fear starts to creep in. And I can transmute that. And it happens in little pieces. It doesn't just happen all at once. So we're constantly discovering more and more about love and fear. And I currently, at this point, I believe that fear is the opposite of love, but it helps you find love. So, just like how the heart chakra, what blocks the heart chakra is grief. There is so much love in grief. even though it's so painful to go through grief, there's so much love in there because you are grieving because of love. And so fear is okay. Fear is okay to be in. It's how we handle the fear and not become the fear. And telling ourselves, like, you are safe here. You are safe here, fear. You're a part of me and I love you. I see you. I see the doubts that come up when I'm moving into this new phase of my life. I see the guilt I have for showing my face in a community that hasn't seen me in over a year. I see the grief of my loved one that I will never, ever be able to replace. I see that. And I have felt that. And it's okay to feel it. But then we choose, right? We choose again and again, and we continue to choose. And if your path right now is to feel these emotions, that's okay. I've had that phase too. I've had that part come up as well, where I had to go and wallow in these emotions for a while to understand why something happened or why I did something. I love you. Remember to be patient with yourself and trust in your heart. Trust in your internal guidance. And don't let fear take over your body. You can let it coexist within your body because fear is always there. It's not about getting rid of it. Just same thing with the ego, you know, like we wouldn't even be able to communicate or talk. I wouldn't be able to make this video without my ego. I wouldn't be able to coexist on this planet without an ego. That's why we are individual human beings, but a part of a greater whole. Ego is always there. It's how you choose to express that emotion and that part of you. And not let it encapsulate and take over your entire being. And that's where we go back to center, right? We go back to center and we remember what matters. And I know this sounds so cheesy, but what would Jesus do? What would Buddha do? Goes back to connecting with our wisdom and learning. Because shame and guilt and fear and doubt and all of these things are going to teach you wisdom. That is the point. I love you so much. And if you're dealing with a lot of fear right now, it's okay. It's all a part of the process. But just know that it's meant to control you. And you are more powerful than that. I love you.